Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Darshan Talks. My name is Darshan Kulkarni. This conversation is going to be about leadership coaching. I know some people were already chomping at the bit, hoping that we were getting on soon. So you did not miss it. We are still here. If you are in the life sciences, you're going to care about this conversation because let's be honest, a lot of us are trying to figure out this is that time in the life cycle where employees are making decisions about where they want to be and what is the right fit for them. So we went into COVID going, will we have jobs? And we're coming out of COVID to the extent we're coming out of COVID with which job do I want to have?
Mm-hmm.
And leadership coaching is going to be part of the process of how we find out the answer to that question. So if you are in the life sciences, if you are in medical affairs, if you are in sales, if you are a leader of some kind or going to be a leader of some kind, this conversation is probably the conversation you want to be a part of. Our guest today has spent 25 years at Johnson & Johnson, various leadership roles, including leading 3 different leadership development teams and a different Johnson & Johnson operating companies. So according to his website, he's kind of shy about this. He has worked at other life sciences organizations as well. So he's got some real in-depth knowledge about the life sciences. And we're lucky to have him. Our guest for today is Ken Sher. He's an executive coach. And you can actually go to his website at shercoaching.com, and I'll be flashing those across the screen as well. I do have to clarify and confirm, nothing that we're saying is legal, regulatory, consulting advice, or clinical advice. This is just for educational reasons only. But if you like what you hear, please leave a comment, please share, please ask questions. I know Ken would love to hear the questions, respond to them. I know I would love to do that as well. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter, DarshanTalks. Go to my website, DarshanTalks.com. You can actually find Ken at shercoaching.com or go to his website, shercoaching.com. And just to be clear, just to make sure it's available, that's the website right on the screen right there. That is his email where you can reach him. He also has a free guide that I will put up for people if they're interested, and we'll talk about that. But good to have you, Ken. How are you?
I'm doing well, Darshan. Thank you. Excellent introduction. Very good, clear communication, if I may put my coaching hat on.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm always looking for feedback. I always wonder if I'm doing this right. So thank you. So let's start from the beginning. I've never had leadership coaching. I've always wondered who is the right person for leadership coaching. I remember talking to a therapist at one point going, do you do leadership coaching? And she's like, I can. And when I realized when she said I can, she hadn't done it. And I feel like this is one of those things that experience plays a role in. So talk to me a little bit about what is the right fit for between a leadership coach and a mentee, I guess?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question because coaching of any kind is an investment, right? So you're going to be spending money. You want to make sure that you're doing it in the right area and that you're going to get a good return on that investment. I also think it's interesting you brought up the therapist because coaching sometimes can come very close to that therapy line. And I'm always very clear to my clients, I am not a therapist, and I certainly would not even pretend to be one. It's all about the professional side of things. I think there are a couple of different ideal candidates. One is somebody who moves into a new leadership role. Those first impressions, first couple of weeks are so critical to establishing your leadership, establishing your reputation. You really want to make sure you do it well and you address the challenges that are inevitably going to come along in the right way, that leave the right impression and message. Another one could be someone who's in a role and they're doing well, but they want to accelerate their growth, or they feel like it could be anything from being stagnant in the role and need to kind of re-energize to maybe the business is stagnant and they just need some fresh ideas and the support to get there. And I think that's another area. Some of my clients come from the companies themselves, where the company says this person's a really high potential person, but they do have some things that are holding them back. We're willing to invest in them to help them get better there so that we can advance them in the company. The one area that I know I wouldn't necessarily suggest investing in is the person who's really struggling as a leader, who maybe is on their way out of a company because coaching is not necessarily going to save you. It might help you, and maybe it will help you with your next role. But I know companies are not going to invest in someone who is so far gone that they know they're really halfway out the door already.
So many questions out of that. So let's start with the last question first. You said companies aren't going to invest into. By the way, Lee Schwartz did point out anyone wanting to grow in their career or role could benefit from using a coach. You need the right one for who you are and what you want. You pointed out that yes, that is true, but with some caveats, and we're going to discuss those caveats specifically. So first of all, Lise, thank you so much for, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Is it Lise? Is that Lise or Liza or?
I think
Lisa?
she goes by Lisa. She's actually a friend of mine, and I have to
Lisa,
admit,
then.
sorry, Lisa, sometimes I struggle with it too, but she's also an excellent coach herself. So she knows from what she's talking.
She is the voice of reason and experience. So Lisa, thank you so much for coming on. We should bring you on next time and have you go toe to toe with Ken. So that should be perfect. So Lisa points out that it's right for everyone. You pointed out that if you are on your way out, a company may not. Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. She pointed out her name is pronounced Lisa. So you point out that if you're on the way out, the company won't invest in you, which makes sense. But I guess my question is that when you invest in yourself? Or is it just the time when you have to recognize the cards you're dealt and start planning your exit strategy?
Well, that's a really great question. I think a couple things. One, maybe that was a little too black and white, that statement I gave, because I do think if you're struggling, if a company knows you're struggling, they might not invest in you unless they see you investing in yourself. Not necessarily going out and hiring a coach yourself, even just looking for help, even internally in a company, finding a mentor, working with your supervisor. That might make a difference. I think that also there are times where, self-awareness, not everybody has self-awareness. And I think there are times maybe when somebody needs to be out the door. Maybe they get, let go before they realize, wait a second, it can't be all them. There's got to be something going on in me. I need to figure out what it is. I need some help in doing that. It could be a therapist, or it could be a executive or some kind of coach to help you do that. But that would be a time where, those people, Darshan, that, oh, this person did that. Oh, that person's an idiot. Oh, they're wrong. And after a while, you got to start to wonder, what do you think? What are you looking at internally? And that's when you might want to invest.
So when you talk about internally, what are they going to invest? You're talking to someone who's sort of on their way out and trying to decide if they believe in themselves the same way. And I think to do that, you have set that tone very, very early on. My question is, if you are a consultant, and I face this all the time, I'm coming in, I'm expected to know what I'm talking about. I expect to come in at a relatively high level. And I'm expected to set a certain tone about how I will be managing conversations. My question for you is, as you pointed out, if you're new in leadership, whether leadership in that company or leadership in general, those first few weeks will play a role in deciding the tone you have for the rest of your time there. And I know I've made several missteps in that before, where I try to be more of a listener, but that we kind of come across sometimes as passive. So how do you balance the need to listen, which is what all leaders should do, with the need to demonstrate that you know what you're talking about, subject matter expertise, and leadership qualities? So how do you balance all that?
Yeah, first of all, I think that's very insightful. I do a lot of career coaching as well, Darshan, where I help people who are in career transition find their next role. And then once they get their next role, oftentimes it turns into executive coaching. And we talk about that. We talk about, hey, they hired you for a reason. They hired you because they think or they know you can impact the role, the department, the company in a positive way. But if you go in there with hey, there's a new sheriff in town and here's how we're doing things, you're going to really set yourself up for a very difficult time. And it's hard to recover from that. So finding that proper balance, Darshan, you're exactly right, is key. And I'd like to talk to, if I could, very quickly about my trust success model, because I
Please.
do believe that trust is the foundation of all great relationships, and great relationships are the key to being successful. And as a leader, you need to develop those relationships, not necessarily be best friends or anything like that, but good, positive, productive relationships. And trust is based on my time at Johnson & Johnson. J&J, they have what they call the J&J Credo. And it's what they base all their major decisions on. It's a 4-paragraph, 1-page document that talks about the commitment to. First paragraph is about healthcare providers and their patients. Second paragraph is to the employees. Third paragraph is to the communities. And the fourth paragraph is to the shareholders. What's interesting about that is Robert Wood Johnson, who was the founder of J&J, he wrote that document. And he wrote it when he was the only shareholder, and he put himself last. So to me, that's a great leadership lesson right there. Put yourself last. It's not about you, it's about the team. So I believe that when you build trust with all those constituents, you're going to really establish yourself as a good leader. And my trust success model stands for transparency, which is about put everything on the table. Let your people know what you got so they can take advantage of opportunities and handle challenges. It's about results. That's the R in trust. Not just the end result, but how you get there. It's about understand the marketplace, understand your people who are working with you, understand the customers or clients. It's about simplify. That's the S in the trust model. So much we have going on. Clear the decks, get the priorities straight and focus on those. And lastly, it's about team. It's not about the leader. It's about your team. If the team's successful, the leader certainly will be seen that way too.
So you talk about the trust model, and you talk about how you're building this team. But trust, whether you're talking about the term trust as you've sort of done with abbreviations or in general, requires time.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've got, as you pointed out, you've got a few weeks at maximum to set a tone. Transparency and all of that stuff is great. But how do you set up that initial tone so that you can establish the trust that you need?
That's really a great question. A lot of it comes down to communication. It's about being clear and consistent in your communication. It's about having one-on-one meetings. I'm a big fan of having regularly scheduled one-on-one meetings with your direct reports, whether it's weekly or bi-monthly. I wouldn't go much less than that. And in those meetings, some of it is about business, but really these meetings should be held 30-minute meetings, actually really not about business. It's more about, if you were a direct report of mine, Darshan, I'd be, so how are you doing? What's going on out there? What are your challenges? What's getting in the way of you being successful? What are your career aspirations, and how can I help you do that? Talking in those terms where it's focused on the employee and how you can help them be successful, I think is a great way to build trust. But it's not just the talking. You've got to actually do it and back it up with actions as well.
But that's such a vulnerable place to be, right? So as the employee, I would imagine the feeling is a new boss, a new sheriff is in town.
Mm-hmm.
They're asking me, it's the question you ask someone when they're being hired. So what is your weakness? And you're kind of going, right now, I don't want to show weakness. This is not the moment I want to show you weakness.
Right.
And yet that is exactly the question you're asking me.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is, in both scenarios, whether you're asking from I'm going to hire you to I want to help you, you're doing that from a place of, is this a good fit? Mm-hmm. On the other hand, from the recipient side, you're just going, I need a job, or I need to continue this job.
Yeah.
So how do you help address the trust gap between the new leader and the report?
Right. Well, you use the word vulnerable, Darshan, and I think that is a word that, or that is actually maybe a practice that a lot of that's misunderstood in a lot of cases. Sometimes people see vulnerability as a weakness.
Right.
And personally, I see it as a strength. So in those conversations, I think if you're able to show some vulnerability, hey, I'm new to this company. I'm new to this department. I don't know a lot of things you know. Now I'm going to bring stuff here. So this is kind of walking that line too, right? Between the new sheriff and making the difference and being kind of humble. I'm bringing some experiences and things that I know can help the department. But I also know you have a lot that can help the department and help me be successful. And I want to do that together. If you're successful, I'm successful. And I might even share a story about when I failed, or when when something did get in my way and I wasn't able to get over it, and how a manager helped me do that maybe. So I think being vulnerable is a great way to lower the defensive walls and help people feel more comfortable. And then, of course, too, I do think you have to make sure that you don't use what they say what they say to you against you. If someone is willing to share and be open and honest with you, you have to accept that in the right way and not make them feel sorry that they ever did that.
But do you sometimes think that that's in the interpretation of things? And what I mean by that is, let's say someone comes in and says, they're in sales, for argument's sake. And they come in and say, I hate selling. I hate knocking on doors. And that's a reasonable place to be.
Yeah.
I can imagine me as the person in charge of sales going, yeah, that's kind of the entire job. I don't know what to do here. And maybe there is an element of, you know what, maybe you're better placed elsewhere. Maybe that elsewhere is within the company in marketing, in a different role altogether, or it's outside the company. How do you demonstrate that leadership sometimes comes in different forms, some of which can be in the form of find the right place for yourself?
That's really a hard thing to do, because I think as a leader, you have to really authentically and genuinely care about your people and want what's best for them in order to build the trust we're talking about, in order to build the loyalty and engagement you want. But sometimes that means it's almost like love, right? Sometimes you got to let it go to demonstrate your love for that.
We all just went through that song when you said "Let It Go," right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say to you that, first of all, if you're a leader and you've hired people in your career, you've probably made a bad hiring decisions. We've all done that. Hopefully we have a much more in the W column than in the L column, but it happens. And then there are people that are in role that just aren't getting it done as you're describing. And I'd say to you that, yeah, there have been people that I've had to let go that it hasn't been happy about. But I would say some of my proudest moments as a leader were helping people to realize that this wasn't the job for them and that they could be happier and more successful elsewhere. And I've gotten calls back from people. Hey, Ken, I got to be honest with you. I wasn't thrilled with you at the time, but you were right, and I couldn't be happier where I am now. And so I think it's hard to do sometimes, and sometimes it might slow you down as a leader, and it's hard. But I think when you do that, you're also building that trust again, and other people in the department are seeing it, and other people are saying, wow, this leader really does care. Even though this isn't helping him or her in their business, they know they're doing what's best for the employee, and that's a company I want to stay with and do the best for. Very quickly, Herb Kelleher, Southwest Airlines, he's passed away recently, but his motto was employees come first. And I love that, because if you take care of the employees, they're going to want to stay there, and they know that to stay there, they got to take care of the customers, and then the customers will be happy. So I think that's an interesting perspective too.
It is an interesting perspective, and I want to contextualize that from the 1980s, and you lived through that, as did I. I was much younger, obviously, so I was less than 10 years old. But I specifically remember the statement, "Greed is good," and that's from Wall Street. And I remember that statement going, essentially what that meant to me was, look out for the company. The company's interests are first.
Yeah.
And we've reached this new stage where the company is now responsible, whether we're talking about to stakeholders who are not necessarily customers. We're talking about like Google having a problem with people in AI, with leaders being responsible and need to demonstrate more than the expected leadership skills, not demonstrate more than just hitting sales goals. Do you think that it is now harder to be a leader today than it was, say, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago?
Interesting. I think you could probably argue both sides of that. I'm going to say, if you do it right, I think it actually could be easier. And the reason why I say that, even though the world is much more complicated now, so there are a lot more things, but that is why I think it may be easier. Boy, that sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? Because I think the leader of the past, the Jack Welches of the past, they were the almighty leader. They have all the answers. They know everything about everyone and every part of the business, and that's their job. I think today, the best leaders are the ones who show vulnerability by recognizing, I don't know everything. There are people in my organization who are better at what they do than I could ever be in the position I'm in. My role is to oversee things, to help people be successful, to put them in a position to be successful. And it's more of a director, like a movie director kind of position, than a roll up the sleeves and get it done. So yeah, there's a lot more complication in a marketplace today than there ever was, especially, with more global, we got technology and all those things. But I do think from specifically the leadership perspective, if you do it right and pull yourself up out of the business, you can allow other people to flourish and do great work, and everybody's successful then.
What you pointed out is this important piece of, to be a good leader, you need to work well with other people. And there are people who are great at that. But then as we get into today's world where social media is more important and where working with people is more important, conflict management has become a much bigger deal. So how do you advise clients on, if you're an introvert, here's how you manage conflict? I'll be honest, I'm a lawyer. I absolutely hate conflict. Like, I want to figure out a way to make it all work for everyone. But that things don't always go that way. How do you advise leaders to handle that strife?
Yeah, well, I think a couple things. First of all, when I was leading teams, we'd have sales meetings or marketing meetings, and I'd lead the discussion. And I would say to people, listen, I want everybody to, disagree with anyone you want to. If you're the administrative assistant in the room and I'm the leader of the team, I want you to disagree with me if you do disagree with me. But at the end of this meeting, when we leave, we all have to go out marching to the same drummer. Right. Now, I wasn't under the illusion that everybody was, immediately going to drop their guard and do that. But I do believe over time, we had some pretty heated moments in there, but it was never personal. It was all about the business, and then we'd move on. The other thing I would say is that the U in the trust success model is about understanding. And I think it's really important that we take the time to understand, where is this person coming from? Why are we having this conflict? It could be anything from just they're passionate as heck about this issue to, I just had a fight with my spouse or partner and I'm just mad at the world right now. So you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. So I really do think trying to get to that understanding of where are we, why are we at this point? And I also try to start with that the other person is coming with the intention of doing good, of doing well, of not looking for, just to be a pain in the neck or anything. You both have the same end goal, typically, that's to be successful in whatever. So try to get that stuff off the table and work towards that.
So what you're suggesting is, as you start bringing these people together, allow different voices to come through in that room, you inevitably create that next generation of leaders, which is great. However, what you also create in that type of scenario, in that type of conflict management scenario, are the next generation of leaders who are going to be super successful. And then there are going to be the leaders who go, you know what? This plan failed, and I told him so that this plan would fail. And you've created that vulnerability for yourself because you think it generates that environment where everyone can discuss. But now the people who are reporting to you who potentially want your job are now seeing this as an opportunity to seize and get ahead of you. How do you at least get yourself out of the mindset that that's something you should worry about?
Well, I think you have to have a level of confidence and self-assuredness that, and because I do think that's where leaders do fall short. They feel like, oh, if this person is too good or they get too much recognition or too much, they're going to take my job.
Right.
And I think if you're worried about that, you will never be a great leader.
Right.
I think the great leaders recognize that I succeed when my team succeeds and people advance themselves. When I was at J&J, every now and then if I were hiring someone internally for a promotion and I would go to that person's leader and they say, oh no, we can't afford to let them go now because we're so busy over here. To me, that is the ultimate in selfishness. Your job as a leader is to help your person do better. And to hold them back for a selfish reason, like that you're going to have to work harder or your people are going to have to work harder until you get someone in, to me, that's just wrong. It's about the individual. And sometimes it may not work out. Sometimes you may have some, that way. But I think more times than not, it will lead to even more success for the leader when they do the right thing and encourage people to step up.
Have you dealt with the scenario where it didn't work out and you had to sort of go, if you look at this in the larger scheme of things, you've had a very, I'm thinking how I would deal with a scenario like that, right? And my thought process would be, if it didn't work out, I would probably hate my reportee's guts a little bit. But if it meant I was getting moved out, my thought process would be, I probably don't want to be in a place where that is encouraged in the way that it's penalized almost.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's very much a hindsight is 2020 or a theoretical scenario. I can definitely imagine my ego being bruised. I can imagine feeling bad.
Yeah. And Darshan, I think one of the things that makes me a pretty good coach is that I know I'm not perfect and things have happened. It's so easy, you may know, to give advice, right, and guidance, and then you look back and think, boy, I wish I would have taken my own advice. Or so there have been situations where there have been people who have worked to me that I do wish I could go back and have kind of a redo with. But I also think that, and I hope this addresses your question, again, getting back to my trust model, the R is about results. And to me, it's not only about the end results, it's about how you get there. We used to say at J&J, if you left a whole bunch of bodies in your wake to have this result that we were looking for, that's not necessarily a great result. So I would say that about a leader or leadership development, that if this person is getting ahead by stepping all over other people, including the leaders, then that's not a good result. And that more often than not is going to hold that person back and not accelerate them ahead of anybody.
Do you think there's a need to have leaders go through ethics training?
I don't think it could hurt. I mean, I think because it's almost like common sense training too, to some extent, on one hand, ethics to me should be common sense. Although I think when you get to legal levels and regulatory levels, sometimes it's kind of hard to know that. But I do think it's an important thing. We used to say when it was simpler, if this story appeared on the cover of the Wall Street Journal, would you be okay with that? And I think it's probably more complicated than that now. So that's probably not a bad suggestion.
Is it okay if it shows up on a Twitter feed?
Yeah,
is it like right. Scenario? Maybe completely unverified, and you have to defend yourself.
That's a modern take on it. You're
right. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we go, a couple of things. What's the best way for people to reach you?
Okay, I do want to say this too, Darshan. I've done a number of podcasts and all, and I will tell you that a lot of times they're very softball, easy questions, and they almost feel like you're setting me up. This was great. You really got me thinking, and I'm sure that's why your listeners really appreciate it too, because it wasn't. I'm a little tired after this. You worked me out.
I'm sorry.
No, it was great. I loved it. It was a real good conversation. If people do want to reach out to me, it could be at ken@shercoaching.com, I'm certainly always open to connect on LinkedIn or check out my website. And if there's something there you want to talk about, I'm always willing to talk to people. I'm not, one of the things my wife always tells me is you got to be a better salesperson for your services. I like to help people. So I'll help people. And then if there's something to go on to work together, great. If not, I love meeting people and helping people. So thank you for that opportunity.
Absolutely. Last question. Do you have any parting words?
My parting words would just be, first of all, again, thank you for having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I would just say, if you're a leader out there or an aspiring leader out there, just think about being authentic, genuine, and honest with yourself and with others. And I think that's a great start, because that'll help you build the trust you need to be successful.
Step 2, reach out to Ken Sher.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Darshan.
Thank you.